Jesus over their relationship with Jesus, knowing Him and growing in relationship with Him. Because of that, they can't do anything. They get this long and slow death process that eventually will prevent them from doing anything beneficial for Christ in this world. In John chapter 15, Jesus describes this scenario like this, like a branch relationship to its grapevine. Jesus says in verse 4, "Abide in me and I in you. And as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." Apart from me, you can do nothing. This is an illustration I constantly come back to, so I know you've heard it before. But here's a picture of a grapevine. I want you to just think of it, look at this image, and understand that a branch's main function on the plant isn't to produce the fruit. Producing the fruit comes as a byproduct of its main task, which is its connection to the vine. So our function in the same way isn't to produce fruit. It isn't actually to do good works. It's not to lead great Bible studies and lead countless people to Christ and to give so much money to missions. That's not our main function. Our main function is to have a deep connection with Jesus. That's the best thing. Our connection to the grapevine, which is Jesus, producing the good fruit in our lives and in our church. Our work is so important, but it's not the most important. It will always come second to our connection to Jesus. I want to show you for a minute what can happen when work comes in first place. It's kind of ugly. Maybe you can look at this in your own life and you can think about it in our church. First of all, when work takes first place in our lives, our accomplishments, we tend to compare with others, and that leads to pride or shame. This is because we shift our identity from a relationship with Jesus to what we can accomplish. And when that happens, we're evaluating what we accomplished with the church down the street, or with the person sitting next to us in the pews. We don't have pews, the chairs. Or the family who's doing it the best way, has the perfect Instagram pictures. It's all about the work, and what happens is we compare with others, and that leads us to saying, "Oh, we're way better than that other family. We're way better than that church." Or, "Wow, we're nowhere near where we should be." Sometimes in our home, we compare our work. I'll be upstairs, just detoxing from the day on Facebook, sitting on my bed, while Kayla's downstairs with Penny. Kayla yells up, "Hey, Sam, what are you doing?" And I freeze. I'm on Facebook. Silence. "Why, what are you doing, honey?" "I'm just building lasting memories with our daughter in her formative years." Funny example, but honestly, that's what it's like when work takes first place. When that's what it's all about. And it hits us at a root level. Another thing that happens when work takes first place is that our motivations are prone to being misguided. And we're easily influenced, which leads to corrupted motives. When our accomplishments become more important than our relationship, that is hunting ground for negative motivations to creep in and to start controlling why we do what we do. Even though we want to please Jesus, if work takes first place, it ends up being all about the thing, all about the accomplishment, all about the reputation or the power. It creeps into doing the good work that we choose to do. When that happens, things go bad quickly. You can see it in churches, you can see it in people's lives. And finally, when work takes first place, we'll never be satisfied or rest because we tend to overwork, which leads to exhaustion. When our identity is not in our relationship with Jesus, but rather in the work that we accomplish, our motivations become misguided, and we find ourselves in this trapped, never-ending cycle of work, production, and critique. Look at this little graph here. We're stuck. We're stuck in this triangle where we work, produce, critique it, rework it, produce, critique it. It's a good model for work. It's a good thing to produce and to work. We were created. God has given us gifts to use and to critique it and to rework it. But if work takes first place, then we're stuck in this cycle and we can't find satisfaction. We hope that if we pour our whole self into the job, that we're going to get our whole self and more back. But the reality is that just isn't how it happens. What happens is that we work until exhaustion. Because there's always more we can do. There's always another dollar to be earned, and there's always another life that we can reach. That's what happens when work takes first place. So commonplace, don't let work take first place. Let your relationship with Jesus take first place. Because if you do, here's what's going to happen. Instead of comparing with others, you can experience God's pleasure in your life. Eric Liddell is an Olympian who ran in the 1924 Olympics, gold medalist in track and field. And he had this to say, and I've used this time and time again. He said that God has made me for a purpose. Because people can look at his life, gold medal winner, and just be like in awe that this guy is just awesome. We want to be like this guy. Look at what he does. He must be so happy in life because of what he's accomplished. But Eric Liddell, he says this. He says, God has made me for a purpose that I know. But he's also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. When was the last time you felt the pleasure of God doing what he has created you to do? While you were studying for the exam, while you were getting your meal ready for your kids and tucking them into bed at night, while you were in the Bible study with your community group. When was the last time you felt pleasure? Well, when the relationship takes first place, we experience his pleasure. Secondly, when relationship is first, we are unshaken. And our motivations can't be misguided. We'll have integrity. Jesus talks about those who hear his words and his teachings are like the guy who goes out and builds his house on a rock. And rocks have integrity. And when the storms come, that house is going to stay where it is because the relationship is built on Jesus, and that's what's most important. As opposed to the guy who builds his life on his works, which is like sand. And when the storms come, it just crumbles at his feet. So when a relationship is first, we are unshaken, and finally we'll find satisfaction and rest in him. Don't be mistaken. Jesus has called us to a life of ministry, a life that requires work in order to enjoy the blessings that he has given us. He's called us on a journey. He's called us to a task, which we are so happy about that we have purpose. But when that takes first place, we lose out because we don't have satisfaction and rest. But Jesus says in Matthew 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you." Yokes back in that day required two beasts to have a relationship with one another, to work with one another. Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The relationship with Jesus, knowing him intimately and growing in him, is the best part. Let me just tell you how we do that. First of all, let me explain the word know. K-N-O-W. What does it mean to know Christ? That seems kind of surfacey, kind of shallow in itself. Well, for us, a lot of times when we say that we know something, we mean we know that 2 + 2 = 4. We know the third law of thermodynamics. There's 3 laws, right? There's a third one? Okay. Or we know that person that we follow on Instagram. We know a lot of facts. But when the Jews would talk about knowing someone, they use this word yada. Can you say yada? Yada is a word that means something beyond just a cognitive knowledge or relationship with somebody. It was the word that was used to describe a husband's relationship to his wife, that he knew her. He knew her in the quiet, in the secret place that no one else knew her. He knew her not just with his head, but with his heart and with his body. That is the type of knowing that Jesus is calling us to, a knowing relationship with Jesus, where we can feel what they feel, we can see with their eyes, we can hear their voice in our life, and without saying a word, we know what is best for our relationship with them. That is the type of knowledge that we are called to. In the past 4 years, I came in kind of as a broken guy. My relationship with Jesus was broken because I realized that I had put work in the first place in my life, and my work had crumbled. The church I was in, I wasn't producing, I wasn't getting the affirmation that I felt like I should, and I just crumbled. But thankfully, I came to a place, and I got a boss like Josh Grimes who had me focus first and foremost on my relationship. And so here's some things that I decided to do. I decided, first of all, to have a Sabbath. Sabbath is taking one day out of the week and making it not about what we produce or what we can accomplish. It's a day totally committed to my relationship with Jesus and his people, his family. Walter Brueggemann, he's this fantastic scholar. He has this book called Sabbath as Resistance, and he says that in our contemporary context of the rat race of anxiety, the celebration of Sabbath is an act both of resistance and alternative. It's the resistance because it's a visible insistence that our life is not defined by production and consumption of commodity goods. Sabbath is a day where we remember, first and foremost, it's all about our relationship with Jesus. Sabbath has been so important for me and my family. So is contemplative prayer. Contemplative is kind of a weird word, but I wanted to distinguish this type of prayer from the prayer that you give right before a test, right before a game, right before you sit down to eat. Great prayers and important, but contemplative prayer, as Thomas Merton says, is a conscious and loving contact with God. It's a practice of intentional quiet time with God that leaves enough time for us to speak, or for God to speak, and for our soul to listen. Sabbath and prayer have been so important to me. When I think back about Commonplace Church, I'll always remember the community. There we go. While it's so important to develop a personal relationship with Christ in the secret and quiet places, our relationship with Christ is flavored by the seasoning of community, will bring you 100 times more the blessings than what you can get by yourself. Over the past 4 years, you, Commonplace Church, have helped me grow my relationship with Christ in ways that I can't even describe. Well, I'll describe a couple ways. My weekly meetings with Tim Dobos have been just humbling and inspiring. Taught me to trust God above all my fears, just like Tim trusts God. My conversations with Jared behind the counter have taught me to find the joy of the Lord in the simple, ordinary things, as well as fantastical things like hobbits and elves. In going to parties hosted by the Gorhams or the Pearsons, I've learned that God is always speaking in the laughter and full bellies around the fire. And all of you who came to those parties taught me that as well. Many others, but also my conversations with Josh Grimes, my boss. I've learned that God is always speaking to us and always inviting us on a journey if only we will open ourselves up to Him. I could go on and on. There's a story behind each of you of how you've shaped my life. But community as a consistent practice in my life has reinforced my connection to the vine and helped me know Christ in ways that I couldn't have otherwise. When we do this, when relationship comes first, we fulfill this image that we find in Psalm 1:3. It says, "He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all he does, he prospers." I want to show you this video here. That's the last kind of illustration of this. I want to show you my favorite day. My favorite wedding that I was a part of. It was my wedding, obviously. And there were a lot of things that made this wedding, a pretty awesome day. The people, the perfect weather, thankfully. We didn't have a plan B. The venue, we were at this place in Yellow Springs, Ohio. That's where Dave Chappelle lives, by the way. But not his house. It was Al Capone's house that he used in the summer. It was beautiful. And we had donuts instead of cake, and we had barbecue for food, and we had music that we loved that we picked ourselves. It was a perfect day. And there was so much work that went into this day, planning. There were times where we would sit at the coffee table in Kayla's apartment and just be a little stressed. We had to remind ourselves that it's going to be okay. Felt like all the decisions we were making was for everybody else, to make everybody else happy, but it ended up being a perfect day. But it was a perfect day because we were able to enjoy the best part. The best part, it wasn't found in the food, it wasn't found in the flowers, the bumping music. The best part wasn't found in the donuts from Schuler's Bakery. It wasn't even found in our friends and family that we loved and we wish the day could have been 3 times as long as it was to enjoy them. Here's the best part. The next, that part right there. You can go to the picture. It was getting to hold my wife in my arms for the first time, dancing with her, saying that this is the best part. It doesn't really change for us as people when it comes to our relationship with Jesus. There's so many things that are important in our life, but we know the things that are temporary, that are going to pass away. The thing that's not going to pass away is our relationship with Jesus. And it's not just something that we just hold on to because we know that that's the one thing that's not going to leave us. We do it because we know that in a relationship with Jesus, we will be connected to the vine, and our life will be full of color, full of power than we could have otherwise. And the same goes for our church. There's so many things to think about when it comes to leading a church. So many good things. Building community groups, impacting our community. But when it comes down to it, it's being found in the arms of Jesus. Our true love. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. So Commonplace Church, and all the wonderful work and mission that you involve yourself in the years to come, don't forget the best part. Knowing Jesus and growing a relationship with Him together. There will be lots of accomplishments along the way. Baptisms. There will be a new building, I'm sure, this one day. New leaders. A new campus minister, I pray. And lots of new babies. If we're going at the same rate, there's going to be a lot of babies. But there's going to be failures too, and that's okay. That comes with the territory. But at the end of it all, the thing that will sustain you and fill you is the genuine love and light of Jesus that He offers you. So don't be separated from that. Commonplace, be a faithful church, be a serving church, be a hospitable church, be a giving church. But above all, be a church that undeniably, unshakably, unwaveringly loves Jesus and grows in relationship with Him. Because if you do that above everything else, you're going to be a church that raises up leaders, that impacts our community, that changes this world for Christ. Let's pray. Father, I thank You for my family.